Hello, welcome to this ESS BIZTOOLS new to advisory services information session for accountants and bookkeepers who are contemplating developing advisory services for your clients. First of all, congratulations. This is a great initiative for you to take to help your clients through difficult trading conditions, to know more about their business, to receive prompt, accurate financial reports throughout the year, not just 1 or 2 weeks of the year when the annual accounts and the tax returns are being prepared. So thank you very much for joining us today on this overall webinar presentation. The first thing I want to alert you to is the Business Analysis Systems Introduction, which is the review of what goes on in your client's business. Because from my own experience as a former Chief Financial Officer and Company Secretary of a listed public company, and then I went back into public practice, I found that I knew a lot more about what was going on in the business when I was in the public company than what I did when I was the partner in an accounting firm servicing SME clients, because basically we were interested in the annual accounts and the tax return. I changed that a couple of years later when we really started introduced in what is now known as ESS BIZTOOLS. But at the beginning, we were fairly remote. And I think most accountants are the same. But if you're going to be the virtual chief financial officer or offer that type of service, you need to know more about your clients. You need to know their internal control system. You need to know where their inventory records are and where the stocks are actually kept. You need to know who's got authority to do various things within the business. The next item is to look at the business planning. That's very important. Business plans for businesses are just as important as maps are for tourists. You need to sit down with the leadership team and develop the business plan. Budgets and cash flow forecasts. We need to have them, but they're the financial interpretation of the business plan. Work through it and identify the key indicators: debtors days outstanding, stock turn figures within the inventory calculations, the projected cash flow forecasts. Are there any problems on the horizon? The 52-week business enhancement system is an attempt to replicate within SMEs what happens in the big end of town, because the big end of town know information daily, weekly and monthly, and they repeat it throughout the year. They just don't get it for 1 or 2 weeks of the year when the tax return's being prepared. In fact, they don't give a lot of consideration at all to the tax return. They're more interested in what happened yesterday. If there was a problem, how do we fix it? And that's a crucial part of this process. Fiscal management is very important for SMEs, and various reviews, but primarily one undertaken by MYOB last year, indicated that many SMEs were unfamiliar with fiscal management. So we've looked at the debtor system and making sure that your clients understand the need to have a formal arrangement with a new customer that wants credit, so that they clearly convey to that customer what their credit terms are, and that they have the process implemented of clearly identifying on the tax invoice the due date for payment, that they understand how the debtors days outstanding are calculated and why it's so important to monitor that figure. We also look at suppliers. Clients need to appreciate, if they're starting a business, they need to have prior contact with suppliers to make sure they're going to get the products that they require, but also what the price is, and also, very importantly, what the payment terms are. Because unfortunately, some people make a mistake, they don't do that, and they go and place their first order and get a rude shock when they find that they have to pay cash on order. And that will jeopardize a lot of their cash flow forecasting if they'd assumed they were going to be able to secure 30-day credit terms, which in this current climate is very difficult with some suppliers. Another big problem that a lot of businesses have is making sure they have built into their planning payments to the Australian Taxation Office for tax deducted from employees' wages, superannuation payments, and GST payments. These are ongoing payments that are very necessary, and the tax office is looking for that money to be paid on the due dates, and they can cause your clients a lot of problems if those payments are not made. The characteristics of a well-run business is our attempt to really highlight the key issues. So you can hand this information in the format that we've written it onto your client and indicate to them that team meetings are very important. So the rhythm of meetings in a business, daily, weekly, monthly, are very important, and making sure someone's in control of those and trying to get some delegation within your client's firm, so everything's not left to the owner. So if the owner doesn't arrive at the office one day or in the factory, that there is a system that ensures someone else is ensuring that these activities are conducted. The Tradies charge out rate calculator is there for you to help with your tradie clients. And my assumption is that virtually everyone that we're talking to in this presentation, an accountant or a bookkeeper, will have tradies as clients. How does your client determine their charge-out rates? Have the charge-out rates got any bearing on their productivity percentages by various people? Do they know that? Or what their costs are, or what their overhead expenses are, or what their profit expectations are? We have a system which will facilitate the calculation of the charge-out rates so that your client has a complete process prepared for them. This is how your business can perform during the year. So you can become the storyteller to convey to them, this is what the business is going to look like at the end of the year. But it's important that the information and the whole process is monitored throughout the year, not just at the end of the year, but throughout the year, so that if there is a variation in the productivity percentage for certain employees, that a decision is made that basically should lead to a recalculation of their charge-out rate. We can't go back and pick up what went wrong and recharge a customer for it, but you can make sure that the future customers are being charged the correct charge-out rate, which depends on the productivity percentage being achieved by that team member. Research and development introduction, I think, is very important. Many SMEs, thousands of SMEs every year undertake research and development activities. So there's a fair likelihood that a client could ask you to tell them something about the research and development system because they've heard that one of their competitors has got some grant money, they'll call it, from the government for research and development. Our system enables you to just click on and go to the system and very quickly to determine what that system is, so you can explain it to your clients. Survival in difficult times, unfortunately, is very appropriate at present. We have high inflation, high interest rate, high business failures, very high, in fact. And we have a situation where there doesn't appear to be much thought for SMEs coming from government circles. So the SMEs are out there battling on their own. They need more support, and you're the key group of professional advisors to give them that support by giving them prompt, accurate financial data that they can look at. So your role in this whole process, I think, is to implement the systems, to monitor what's going on, to be aware that the business does operate 52 weeks of the year or very close to it, depending on the seasonal conditions and the location of the business, of course, so that your client is getting prompt information so that if a problem emerges, it's identified and it can then be fixed. So I look forward to being able to talk to you about these matters as we move through in our presentation of webinars. So if you want to know any more about the services that are provided, you can contact us before. Just send me an email, peter@ESSBIZTOOLS.com.au, or give me a telephone call, 0418 190 181. Have a great day. Goodbye.